everybody, and thank you for joining us back again on the Time of the Dash podcast. As you can see, I'm joined once again with Brother Mitch, my new partner in crime, and my dad once again, as we're continuing on with his testimony. If you remember from last week's episode, he told us about his upbringing, not being raised in church, and someone taking him to a couple of services as a young teenager, and how that thought had never left his life. He remembered the scripture memorization and the singing from church, and then he got saved in his early 20s, and then God called him to preach when he was about in his early 30s, around 31 years old, and the dream that he had, that the vision that he had, that God had given him to confirm that calling. And so we're going to pick back up right there this week and try to go a little bit further with his testimony. Now, Dad, a lot of times when people are faced with bringing out the acceptance of the call to preach, sometimes they're met with, positive comments, encouragement and things of that nature. Sometimes they're met with obstacles and negative. And what you think you're going, how did the people around you take the news of you saying that you was called to preach?
Well,
because I know a lot of people, around us probably at that time, and maybe even in our family, and things didn't go to church and things at that time. So
yeah, right.
What was the overall reaction to the news that you're going to step out into the ministry?
It's sort of like one of them situations. Well, we'll just wait and see. Sort of like that. See how it turns out. I said, that's just old Bill. Yeah. We know his life. We know what he's been into. We know what he used to do. Some of the things he did, and we'll just wait and see. And I said, Bill, I mean, he ain't had no formal college education relating, in the scriptures of the Bible, which I didn't. What college I had was mostly arithmetic, right. Mathematics, engineering part of it, and but my sister said, I used to invite them to go to church, and they say, "Oh, it's just old Bubby. That's just old Bubby. We'll just wait and see." But guess what? Whenever something goes wrong, like I got a baby sister right now, it's got cancer, lung cancer, and guess who she depends upon?
Oh, yeah.
And she sent me a paper here a while back, and I guess it's all right to say it, but she said, Billy, I want you to have this. Something happens to me. She had her funeral arrangements on it. And, people watch your life.
Yeah,
they do. They watch your life. We better live it as best we can. And I don't regret being a Christian one day. I don't. I remember, like I said, I just thought maybe old Bill's just wanting to be something he ain't. And I remember they sent me one time, and I've told this story before. I was always, worrisome over my speech, But somebody told me one time, well, was Moses an eloquent speaker? I went, no, no, not really. That's the reason God Aaron to help him. Right. And I said, well, but God still wanted him anyway, didn't he? And somebody told me one time, I said, well, maybe that's the reason he calls different people the win,
right.
Our families and loved ones. They might listen to Mitch and not listen to me.
Right.
They might listen to Chad and not listen to me. And I remember one time they sent me for a week schooling up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was all contractors, and I was up there. And every time the instructors would be up front, around the blackboards or whatever, and all these other contractors, contractors from all the way across the eastern part of the United States. And every time they turn around or they want somebody to answer something, they'd look back and say, "You, Bill Clifton back there. Hey, you, what's your answer on that? What's your take on that? Will you stand up so we can hear you?" And why me? I'm the greenest of them all. I'd stand up and I'd tell them. They'd look at each other and grin. I said, "That's a good answer." Sit back down. Well, hour later, "All right, Bill, it's about your turn again." And I looked around and I said, "Dang, but I'm the only one they're asking." And one day after the class, I said, "Why are you picking on me?" I said, "You got people here that's better qualified than I am. Why do you keep calling on me?" I never did like oral book reports,
Right.
stand in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things for people to do is get up off their pew and come to an old-fashioned altar and pray.
Yeah.
But don't you think God don't see that?
Oh, yeah.
And God will honor that. And they said, "Well, Bill, I'm just going to tell you the truth." He said, "We're going to take you out to a big old steak dinner." And I went, "Why? What have I done?" He said, "Well, the reason we keep getting you up," and they looked at each other as two instructors. They just grinned, they laughed. "So I'm just going to tell you the truth. I don't know how else to tell you. We just love your accent." And I said, "Accent? It's you Yankees that got problems with talking, not the Southern hillbillies." And they took me out and bought a steak dinner. And I remember the company I worked for up in Bluefield. Worked for them, I guess, 10.5 years. And every time we went to a meeting or something, or with other contractors and inspectors and things, they was bad about somebody would slip in, a few drinks that shouldn't be there. And they'd come over. One guy, he kept coming over with a little long neck bottle and tried to get me to take it, and I wouldn't. He put me up against the wall, and I would not. I said, "Nope, I don't drink, and I don't want nothing to do with that." A few minutes later, the president of the company come over and said, "Have you met old Bill Clifton here? He's a preacher of the company." And that fella, he backed off and he left me alone and left. And I don't believe nobody else was around me the rest of the day. But anyway, people notice what kind of life you live. And that worries me. I'm always afraid that I'll make a mistake or do something wrong. And but others, like I said earlier, they just said, "Well, we'll just wait and see." So if he can live it, even my own mommy told me, said, "Well, honey, that's the best thing that ever happened to you. You live it." And I'm doing my best to live it.
When you just said that, one of the things that just came to me was, what would be worse? Telling them right with the possibility of at some point maybe making a mistake and telling them one thing wrong. Yeah. Or letting them continue doing wrong, never say a word. Never telling them the right.
Yeah.
So that's the balance we got to find. That's right. I mean, that's the balance we've got to find. How one thing you had also mentioned in that was not having any biblical education. That people's like, you never went to the
Bible college
seminary or Bible college or anything like that. And there's a lot of great men that never went to Bible college. I'm all for Bible college. My daughter goes to Bible college, as we've talked about. Brother Mitch went to Bible college. Different ones. A lot of great folk that went to Bible college, and if God calls you to do that, then absolutely do that.
Yes.
There are a lot of great folks there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That did not have that and have been used greatly in ministry.
They were blessed.
I know of ministers right now that couldn't read. Mm-hmm. God would deal with them on a story in the Bible. They would tell their wife and say, "Okay, I feel God telling me this story. This is what I'm going to be preaching on tonight."
I know some too.
And she would read those scriptures to him. Wow, that's awesome. Until he could memorize them. And he would try to follow along with her in those scriptures while she read it to him, enough to where he kind of memorized it best he could and would learn a word here and there, and then he would get up and he would try to read that or quote that back. Wow. And preach his sermon based on that. And preached great.
Yeah.
And but never had a formal biblical education. Never went and studied under any great professor, other than the professor. Right. And so if there's a young person out there that is struggling with the call on their lives, oftentimes young people let them scare them away, and they'll run from that. But run to it. God will help you to be what He wants you to be. He's not going to put you out in the middle of something and tell you, okay, you're out here to swim on your own. He's going to help you. He's going to provide what you have need of, and He's going to help you to do that. And so don't allow that to scare you off. If God's calling you to do something, then just follow that leading of God, and it's going to be a great thing for you. How do you feel, Dad, that the ministry has impacted your family, and what role did it play in their lives? I know I could probably come up with some answers to this, seeing it firsthand. It firsthand there growing up. You was talking about you was being called to preach in '87 and ordained in '89, and all that. And I, as far back as I can remember, you've been preaching. I was born in '82, so by the time my memory got real good, you was already preaching. And so I can remember the ordination service here when you was ordained. You actually had it on cassette tape, and I can remember as a kid listening to it over and over. And I can remember us going to revivals that you was preaching, and you would work long days and then come in, and we'd have to rush out to go somewhere to preach that night, and then maybe the next night would be singing with Key Mountain Brothers somewhere, and we'd be rushing, going all that, and then a lot of times we had school, and the sleep that we would get in the car could be the most of the sleep that we would get. Weekends traveling back and forth to Winston-Salem and preaching at times, and just different things like that. But in those times, I can remember one time a big storm happened, and you was preaching a revival over at Rosa Cole Church. And it may be in one of your stories that you was going to go over. I don't know, but you and I were in your '78 F-150. Is that what it was? Your brown F-150 you had? I believe is what we was riding that night to service, because the storm had hit and everything, and we got headed over to the church. And as we went up the hill there to get on the main road there from the house, a big tree had fell across the road. And we didn't really have a chainsaw or nothing. We got out and we tried to cut, break off all the limbs we could, and then you drove that big F-150 over the rest of the tree. And we went on to church, and we were wet.
You didn't have to tell that now.
We were wet, and we were dirty. And when we got there, I can remember Dad's dress shirt had dirt and stuff up the sleeves of it.
I forgot about that.
Because it was, but we made it to church, and we had a responsibility to be there. That's right. And if there was any way possible, we needed to be there. And and I was a young guy then. I can also remember, this is an impact. There was many a times going to church with you as a young man that I received offerings that were just as big as yours. Some of the sweet little old sisters in the church would they would put their dollar or whatever in the offering for Dad, and then they'd come around and they'd hug us kids and slip us some money. So that was a great impact that the ministry had on.
That happened a lot, didn't it?
I would get in the car and say, Dad, how much did you get?
He did. He'd ask me that.
And no,
he did.
The ministry is not about money.
That's
right. It's not. But, those sweet ladies those sweet sisters that were faithful every time that we went to do that, though. They never know what a difference that made in a child's life, because I mean, growing up, we didn't have a lot, as far as that goes. We didn't have a lot of extra money or anything, so having that little bit, just man, it may have been $2 they would give you, or it might have been two sisters giving you $1 each.
Yeah. But that was money back then.
It made you feel like a king,
Oh, yeah.
And so
stop on the first gas station.
Yeah, Dad, I want to pop.
Yeah.
And so
we tried
go by Buddy's and get an ice cream up there or something, So it just what impact do you think that the ministry has had on your family?
Well, to me, the ministry is truly a great calling, and to me, we need to. Those that are called, to me, you need to always remember, you got to let God lead you in everything you do. I mean, we'll make mistakes, we'll flub up, we'll stumble, but God is just to forgive you and bring you back into the fold and help you. And whether not just the call for the ministry, but also Christian life. Lay members is just important as ministers. Not everybody preaches, not everybody sings, not everybody does, other jobs. I remember at church that I was at, before I backslid, and it was part of the reason I was MC. I was leading the service. I was leading congregational singing, day and night, Sunday school. I was a treasurer. I was doing everything but the preaching. And really, for me, I was having a hard time with all that. And that's when I got away from God some. But back to your question. I knowed that it would play a big, or have a big impact in my wife and my kids' lives. You hear the old saying, I've heard a lot of preachers say it and wives say, well, God called you, but he didn't me. It don't work that way. And I thank God I've got a wife that stood by me through thick and thin. And when we got married up our Webb's Chapel in 1977, and when we took those 2 unity candles and lit one, then what affects me affects her. What affects her affects me. So I always felt when we twain become one, I always felt like if he called me, he called her. If he called her, he called me. Right. And I hope I'm saying that right.
Oh, you are.
But I think there's good and bad, in every situation. But the greatest thing that ever happened to me is when God gave me the opportunity to go to heaven, call heaven my home, and gave me a good woman. There were times we was out preaching. You was talking about some of our trips. I mean, we've been several states, several counties and places, and rough. Almost wrecked a few times. Was preaching a revival down in Keene, North Carolina, and I remember coming up and getting on the interstate, and man, we about got wiped out. And there were times of preaching down here at State Line to where I was up preaching, and when I was up preaching, you remember they scratched down both sides of our alumina, keyed it or something there, down both sides, bent the tags over, spit wads and water on, throwed them in my wife's hair and yours, and me up there preaching, and y'all getting all that done to you, sitting over halfway back in the church, I guess, and me not knowing a thing about it till it was over with. I mean, there were some things that happened. They were a great impact, and I remember going to Jill Valley to a church one night, and the guy, we was in that little sort of a reddish orange Toyota pickup, and it might have been before your time, I don't know now, But there was a guy got behind us in a dark green Ford pickup and tried to run us out of the road, chased us up through there, blowing his horn, blinking his lights, shooting over and trying to push us out of the road. And my wife said, hurry up and get up there, hurry up and get up there. He's going to wreck us. He's going to kill us. And I said, he almost looks like Ratliff boys that I know. His truck looks like it. I said, I hope there ain't nothing wrong. So I just kind of prayed to myself, me trying to drive, trying to decide what to do. We ended up pulling off the road up there at this one place where there was an outside light. Boy, he shot in beside us, got out in the coveralls, and he walked over to the vehicle on my wife's side, and he leaned over, and I flipped the inside light on so he could see us. He jerked back, and he pulled his hand out of his pocket. It looked like he had a bulge, like maybe a pistol. He jerked his hand out, and he went, "Ooh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong vehicle. I thought you was somebody else I was after. I'm sorry. I don't remember what I said. Maybe something like, come on up and see us in church." And I pulled out. But, I mean, things like that's happened. I've told the story here about preaching a service down the state line. And I told it about my belt buckle flying off. And the fella that looked like Fonzie was downstairs and he had a black shoestring. Where that guy came from and where he went, I don't know. All I know is he was there and said, "You needing something?" I said, "Yep." I said, "This big new belt buckle I bought." I said, "It flipped off, and here I am fixing to get up in front of the whole congregation." He said, "What do you think you need?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Would this black shoestring help you?" And he was standing there in like an old leather jacket, like a Fonzie jacket, I call it, motorcycle jacket. And he gave me a shoestring I tied in my belt and sewed it together. I preached that night or day. I can't remember. I believe it was a night. It was a night watch service, I believe. And I went back downstairs to thank him. I was going to pay him or give his shoestring back. And he was gone. I asked the pastor who it was, and he said, "Who? There ain't nobody here like that. There ain't nobody here in that jacket like that." "No." I said, "Well, the church's pretty full. Maybe he slipped in and out." I said, "They can't get down there unless they come through these steps here." And he thought us a little crazy, I guess, but God will work things out for you as long as you be willing to do what God wants you to do. And I'll never forget that. And my boys, my wife, have been one of my biggest inspirations to keep me going. That's the reason I would always take them to church, whether I got to go in or not. I'd take them because that's how important it was to me. And now I'm so proud of my boys, proud of what Chad's doing. It's been a great big impact on them. I know there was times they had to do without because we didn't have nothing. We'd have to use our money to pay for gas to go here and there. We still do.
Yeah, and it's living on through your grandchildren as well. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
And so what we've talked about your life in the ministry. What ministries for all those that I guess maybe don't know you or know your story? What ministries have you been involved in? I know there's been several, but
That's a big question there, a big statement. Well, I'm an evangelist, just like here several weeks, usually on Sunday mornings or Sunday evenings. Like I was over B Pentecostal next to Council this past Sunday, and before that, the week before, I was over duty Pentecostal. I'm an evangelist. I have a nursing home ministry, King Mountain Prison Ministry. I remember one time up there in Lebanon, I was at 4 nursing homes having church services in one day, all in the same day. The Keene sisters, are my friends. They wanted me to go, and I just grabbed my old guitar and Bible and went. And 4 services, 4 different nursing homes there that one day. And I have, came out in prison, home visitation. I go to their homes, have church services with them, like Sister Happy and Brother Rick and all different ones from this church.
Man, that's powerful.
I've done it, and not just in this church. I never did feel like we were single ourselves at our church and nobody else's.
Right.
There's people up the holler where I live that I went and had church service with them.
Yeah.
They said nobody ever come seen them.
Yep.
So I'd go there and preach to them, sing to them. I remember Sister Bonnie Boyd down here several times. I was at her house. She used to be here, a member here in this church. Different ones over 8 hours and different ones I'd go see. That was part of being a minister to me, the calling, and hospital visitations. I've done a lot of that and still do. And cemetery meetings and memorials, what we used to call old-fashioned type dinner on the ground meetings. I've taken care of about 5 of them a year, preaching, singing and stuff. Funerals, I do weddings. I even temporary pastored for about 8 months, Loggy Bottom, until they could get a pastor. I just didn't feel calling at that time to take the church. They asked, but I just didn't feel the calling at that time, Loggy Bottom. And then when I left there, Deliverance Tabernacle at Patterson, Dewey Wardle Church didn't have a pastor. So I was there about roughly 8 months until they could get a pastor. And I always felt like doing whatever was needed, and somebody asked me to come do something like this Saturday. For years, I've been going to the Ray of Hope school supply giveaway,
Right.
and it's going to be over Whitewood Fire Department this Saturday from 5 to 8, and they've done asked me to come back again this year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not, trying to toot my horn, nothing like that. But there's always something we can do for God if we would just look and do it.
Yeah.
Wow. So good, Bill.
That's a big statement.
I remember your daddy-in-law. You asked Steve about this, Mitch. I've stood out in my yard and practiced maybe a new song. And I'd sit on a park bench, I'd sit on the front porch, or I'd just be standing out there edge of the yard, beating on my old guitar, singing away. Well, your daddy-in-law Steve went up the road one evening. There I stood, and I thought to myself, he's going to think I'm loco. I was standing there singing and stuff, and he slowed down. I seen him looking at me. But what he didn't know was I'd received a phone call from my neighbors across the road, or across the creek. And they had lounge chairs lined up beside that creek down over the hill below me.
Wow, yeah.
And they'd requested me to sing certain songs that I wrote. And they'd asked me to do that. So I was standing there singing to them, but Steve couldn't see them because the house blocked them.
Yeah.
But I was looking at them, and they was looking at me. And Steve, all he could see was me. So I guess I kind of did look a little peculiar, but I don't regret it, because some of them same people. Last year, I preached a Blankenship Cemetery meeting, and up on Page, and there was a man and a woman, probably in their late 50s, come and prayed, even at a cemetery.
Yeah.
So I don't regret, anything I've done. I just wish I could have done more, and and God will work a miracle. God can work out all the impossibilities. I'll tell you this, and then I'll try to slow down on my talking a little bit, but I guess I talk too much. But I believe that's part of the calling, being a windbag sometimes. Me anyway. But this happened when I was with the King Mountain Brothers, and we always had guitars, plenty of guitars, and the bass. Well, Brother Mac started, he played the banjo. And I always saw the need for a mandolin player. As far as I know, I never even had one in my hands. I prayed about it and said, God, if I can trade up a mandolin, will you show me how to play it? Maybe to break the music up a little bit. Well, I found out one day that Damon Cordell lives over in Fork Ridge near Raven, out from my in-laws, my mom and dad-in-law. He had one he bought, but my understanding, he said he couldn't do much with it. So I ended up trading him almost a new 22 automatic rifle for that mandolin. And I went over and got that about 3 o'clock on a Sunday. When I was over my in-laws, I just walked on around the hill there and got it, brought it to my in-laws, didn't even know a chord on it, and brought it down here to King Mountain Church at 6 o'clock. By then, I'd done scribbled on a piece of paper 2 or 3 chords, and I played it in church at 6 o'clock. Been playing it ever since. And to me, 3 hours there, God blessed me.
Oh, yeah.
So who but God can do such things as this? There's nothing impossible that God can't do. Whether it be a sickness, whether it be someone need to be saved, somebody's hurting, someone's facing financial problems, somebody facing any kind of problem, God can work it out if you just ask.
And you mentioned songs that you wrote. Have you ever thought of? I think we mentioned it on the Key Mountain Brothers episodes, but do you remember just an estimate of how many songs you've actually written?
Yeah, so happened I counted them this morning, I believe it was, or sometime today. I have got 102 finished, and that's besides some miscellaneous parts,
Yeah.
And Lord has blessed me with that, and well, I don't like to say, I can't take the credit for them because they'd be something there that would happen that the Lord would inspire me, and maybe a line in a song or something hit would stick with me, and I'll be going down the road. I'd take my phone, I got a recording button on it, and I'd say, da 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 da. Remember, that's a song.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Then I'll come home and I ask the Lord. There had been times. I remember going to church one night,
I need to remember that record thing,
and the Lord.
I'll be driving down the road and get one. By the time I get home, I forgot half of it.
It worked. The Lord dealt with me, and I went in my office and sat down. In 15 minutes, I wrote the whole song and went to church not long after and sang it. My biggest problem right here now, I guess it's got something to do with maybe a little bit of age, just getting a little bit older. Sometimes I have to sit down and try to remember how they went. And that's the reason I got this songbook there. Yeah. I use that iPad.
So what is your favorite song? Not song that you've written, but your favorite song overall? And I know
I can't use one that I've written.
Well, I mean, I guess.
Well, I've got, to me, any song, gospel song that comes from the heart, to me, that is special to me, as long as it's truly a gospel, religious, righteous song. I guess one or some of my favorite songs that the Lord gave me has been the ones that I've had the privilege of my grandkids to help me sing on. Angels That Play and Little Hands. Because I remember over here praying one time, and I'm wanting to say it was Xander, but it might have been Canaan or one of the girls, maybe it's Katie, come over and went, bless Papa, bless Papa. And you know what stuck with me? And one day I sat down and wrote a song called Little Hands of Praying. Or I down on my knees of praying and remembering back when I felt little hands that are laying all over my back. Yeah. And you don't forget stuff like that. But one of my favorite songs, now Brother Mike Compton, Brother Robert, sang with them all these years. So naturally I love all of them songs. Yeah. But one of my favorite, I guess, is Somewhere. that the Lord gave me. And what inspired me to that was at a bond camp meeting down in Kentucky one year. There was a preacher and his wife got up and played the piano and sung. They talked about, you know, come over there or be there. I came home. That was what bond camp meetings, what, usually in October.
Yeah.
I came home. I was in my recliner one day. I believe it was around January, maybe the 12th, somewhere around there. And all of a sudden, the Lord just like it hit me somewhere. You know, Mom, Dad's always prayed for you. All we ask is just be there. And you look around trying to see if you can find dear old Mom and me, you know. And anyway, I just started writing that all down. And to me, that's my hope and my wish for my family. Is for me and my wife and everybody to make it. And my hope and my wish is for my family to make it.
Yeah.
And everyone that's willing to go.
What about a book? You have not necessarily a book of the Bible, but do you have a favorite book that you like to read?
Well,
or a favorite author that you like to read from?
Well, mine, when you said favorite book,
Now, it can't be a coloring book.
I've done that
Although
too.
I like those.
Yeah. I've always liked to color, but when you say favorite book, and naturally the one come to my mind is a good old King James version of the Bible.
Yeah.
But I am bad.
Well, that's the only version.
Yeah, I don't. You mean they might make another? And I didn't know. No. But you know, I am guilty of sometimes looking at commentaries, dictionaries, history books. I like Fox's Book of Martyrs, Dale Moody, Spurgeon's. Just whatever I can find sometimes. And believe it or not, I carried in an old history book in my house the other day to look at it. Did you know? I think it's today. I may be wrong. And but I think today is maybe the 45th anniversary of the Vietnam War. It might have been today. That's what I read somewhere, but it might not have been. So don't take that to the bank. But I got to think, or history, there's some things that happen down through history that we need to look at sometimes and remember.
Yeah.
And but that is about anything that I can trust to me or feel like I can trust that there's truth in it. To me, it's a good book.
What about a favorite hobby?
Well, my whole life, I've always been a person that if something looked a little hard to do or make, doing that. Now, I've got a little wood shop out there or a little building, you know. There's a big old sign there that says, whenever it's broke, take it to Papa's house. He can fix anything. Well, that ain't true, but I like stuff like that. Yeah, I think you know. And my greatest hobby, I guess, is reading. And well, I don't want to call it a hobby. To me, it's a way of life. And that's reading and studying the Word of God. But I like playing with musical instruments. I like writing new songs. I like doing things like that. And but most of all, my greatest enjoyment is whenever I can get the opportunity to play and sing with my grandkids. To me, I ran across some pictures here a while back, and there was some playing a mandolin or a guitar or a fiddle or a harmonicas, and you know, you don't forget that.
Yeah, good times. A lot of good times. Now this one's a different one. What is something that you can share about yourself that others may not know?
Uh-oh.
Now let's try to keep this one limited down because there might be a lot of things people may not know. But...
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I guess some people think I'm stern and a sour looking person. Well,
No,
I'm not.
I don't believe that for a minute. I know, and that's not sarcastic.
I was like, where did they get that from?
Yeah, they're
I'll,
blind. They're blind.
I'll be honest with you, I like pulling pranks.
Yeah, I can see that.
And to me, whenever a new guy came on the job where he worked for me or with me, I'd always say, now, before I put you to work, I need to know one thing. They said, what's that? Can you take a joke?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, can you take being embarrassed? They said, why? I said, well, driving nails or doing the same old job day in, day out, day after day after day after day after day. Once in a while, you want to be able to laugh about something, make the day go by better. And I said, if you work with me, then I'm going to pull a prank on you somewhere in there when you least expect it. I've even pulled pranks on my kids. Some of them, I'm not going to use no name. I don't want to do it to embarrass them, but we was at I guess a Walmart or someplace, Rosa sometime one time, and uh, anyway, one of the kids, they I gotta be careful here because I won't do it. But they
He always liked playing pranks in public places.
I did.
It wasn't just at home. It was. He
But
really enjoyed the.
Here we come down the aisle where these old sink plungers were.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this one person asked me, said, "What is that?" I'll have to tell you this. It was one of my grandkids, but that's all I can tell you. They said, "Papa, what is that?" I said, "Don't you know what that is?" They said, "No." Now I know they always like microphones, around church and stuff. I said, "That's a microphone." Ah. I said, "Yeah, it'll change your voice." He said, "You kidding me?" I said, "No, try it." How? I said, "Just put it right up there and just sing away in it." They stuck it up there and sung.
Thank the Lord.
And it changed. It was a brand new one. So to me, I mean, I hope I didn't tell that out of turn, but that's the reason I don't want to use no names. I wouldn't embarrass anybody. But I've had pranks, and some of my grandkids has pulled pranks on me too.
Yeah.
But that makes life worth living.
Yeah. We'll skip down to this last question here for the sake of time, but if you could issue a challenge to young people today, what would you tell the young people today?
Well, I guess I'd say, young person, there are going to be times you're going to get nervous. You're going to have butterflies. If you've got the calling in your life, you'll definitely have them. And guess what? Those butterflies don't go away always. And you'll still be nervous. I mean, whether it be a big church or a little church, anytime. You stand before a crowd of people and you're handling the Word of God, you've got awesome tasks before you. You can make a mistake. I've stuck my foot in my mouth. I remember when I first started preaching, I was up at Wilderness Tabernacle. And man, I was so nervous. I mean, I was all to pieces. And then right when my nerves felt like they finally calmed down, it was almost time for me to walk up on the pulpit. I said, all right, God called me and I'm going to do this. I believe He called me all my heart. I got up, walked up there and stepped up on the pulpit and turned around and the doors flew open back there and looked around and Grant Horton walked in. He walked in, walked around in the front pew and sat down right in front of me and sat there. Like that. I went, I mean, that's close. Well, he's almost as close as, about like you're that piano bench there, I guess. And I thought, oh my. And then, I thought, I mean, a big name preacher walk in and me? God will use you and bless you no matter what. Yeah. And anyway, he, as I preached, I noticed he started crying. He started slipping down in the pew, and he got down on his knees. And I thought, man, I must really be done bad. I mean, I was all pieces. And finally, at the end, he got up and he walked up there and he laid his hands on my shoulder and looked at me. He said, I didn't know why God wanted me here tonight, but now I know. You keep preaching the way you're preaching. God is using you, and he gave me what I needed. Then he turned around and walked out the door. And when he went to his truck, nighttime now, there was a swarm of honeybees in his coveralls that was laying in his truck bed. And I've never known of honeybees that travel in nighttime and be in his coveralls. And they was church people, were Mike Justice and a bunch of others went there and looked at it. And he said, God wanted me to hear what you had to say tonight. And he said, don't change.
I have to say, the majority of the times that I've heard you preach, I've slid down in the pews and been crying.
I'd say, like to say, young person, keep up the fight.
Yes.
Just let God lead you and direct you, and he will help you. And elder person, don't quit, don't give up. He'll help you too. Look how far he's already brought you.
Whether you're 550 or 500, God can use you.
That's right.
Yep.
Brother Mitch, you got anything?
No, I'm good. I think it was great. I learned things I didn't know about Brother Bill tonight.
You didn't know he was sour?
You know, I've never experienced that. We call
You know I was a lemon.
I live up the road from him. I always call him. He's the mayor of Clifton.
Oh,
But no, I appreciate Brother Bill and the ministry he's had and the impact he's had on my life the few years that I've lived here. So, man, I think it's great. It's powerful. And our youth need, they need to hear that God's still calling and God's still using.
Yes.
And he's still helping and he's still in all that business.
Yes, he is.
yes, amen.
And I love it. I appreciate what you do and all the ministries. And I'll tell you this, man, I think it takes a special calling. And I've got to go and be in a couple services with them when I was on our shift. I don't get to go as much now because I'm on day shift and don't get to go. But man, you think about the need that's there.
Yeah.
In the nursing homes and in the prisons, my goodness, the need that's there and how God can use and maybe even in ways you don't even know. Won't know until you get to heaven, probably. But there's a lot more to it than what we realize a lot.
Yes, they are.
I appreciate what you do and Brother Chad as well. It's great.
But we can do it together.
That's right.
And we can go to heaven together.
Well, I appreciate everything that's been said this week, these last 2 weeks here on the podcast. And again, appreciate all you listeners out there. I'll try to, for any of you that are not local or don't know, how to get in contact with Dad, if he wasn't, want to reach out to him or send the words of encouragement or anything like that, I'll try to list maybe some of his details in the description. But always be in prayer for all of our ministers and all the ministries that are out there, that we can try to reach everyone we can while we can. And so thank you again for listening. And until next week, may God bless you. Let's keep making it count.
When I win this war, I've got a church and a family, and they're worth fighting for.